5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire. The only thing we have to fear is fear.
Mile 18.
This is Endurance Nation.
Hey there, it's Coach Patrick here from Endurance Nation. Normally this is the section of the podcast where I tell you about a sponsor, offer, or special deal. But instead I'm going to talk a little bit about what sets Endurance Nation apart from other groups of coaches out there. The biggest thing for me, as your coach, is helping you to understand that I'm interested in building the long-term athlete. We have a 3-year plan inside Endurance Nation, and when you start with us, we put you right directly on that track. I'm not worried about your workouts for next week. You get those right away. You get those in the second day you're on the team. You get your workouts for the whole season. You're 100% in charge of what you do all the time. No more waiting for coaches, no more waiting for feedback, looking for strange emails or duplicated workouts. Your workouts, your calendar, you're in charge. Done. Instead, I want to focus on the big picture stuff. What are the special levers that we can pull, the things that we can do that are going to make you stronger and faster on a quicker timeline? I have zero interest in reinventing the wheel. My biggest regret as a triathlete was the first 7 years of my triathlon career where I had no idea what I was doing and I totally messed things up. If I could just get that back, who knows where I would be today? So you get to avoid all of those mistakes by leveraging not only my experience, but that of the other 500 athletes on the team from across the globe. We're super excited to help you out, and you can get all of this just by signing up and creating your membership. You get everything in the first week in terms of what you need from an onboarding call to connections with me as your coach, and we go forward from there. It's a 30-day money-back guarantee, zero risk, and totally worth trying out. If you're an athlete who is ready to crack your personal code, who wants to get to the next level, whatever that may be, looking for a community, you want to have fun along the way, Endurance Nation's for you. Check us out, endurancenation.us/join. Hey folks, Coach Patrick here, Endurance Nation, back with another weekly podcast, adding to the thousands of podcasts we've done before, and undoubtedly the many more podcasts that will come. This week, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about handling the challenges that we face now in this pandemic year of racing, living, training, being, from a perspective that I've developed over the years in my personal experiences as an athlete, as a coach, as a leader, struggling with challenges along the way. Now, of course, I certainly haven't faced a challenge like this pandemic. Many of you, I'm old, but I'm not that old. But seriously, though, there are many parallels between the challenges and the decisions that we are faced with making now and similar situations in the past where we've had to make some tough choices related to training or related to broader strategy elements of being an endurance athlete, of being a successful endurance athlete. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that today from my experience. So for those of you who don't know, Coach Patrick, I have done 30 Ironman races. I've qualified for Ironman Hawaii 11 times, which means there's 19 times that I did well and not so well. I spent about 7 years, my first 7 years of racing between 2001, 2008, making lots and lots of mistakes. Along the way, started coaching and eventually started Endurance Nation. And then since then, have enjoyed a fairly good run of being good at long course triathlon, maybe not so much at other things, as my friends will tell you. But I've had plenty of ups and downs in those years. So I like to say that I've qualified for Kona 11 straight times, but that's not true because I've missed some years. One year I broke my collarbone in a bike crash. Another year I cracked my hip. Another year I was sick. And as a result, there's been plenty of ups and downs and challenges in managing a healthy athletic life. And I put it in that context because it's 2020. I started in 2001, 19 years of playing the game. And those of you who have been doing some particular activity, hobby, job, profession, even just being married for 19 years, understand that there's a lot that gets packed into that time frame. So these are my top 4 lessons that I wanted to share out with you from my experiences and making changes to the challenges that we face as endurance athletes all the time. And I hope that it provides some context for you as you go through the process of making decisions during this pandemic time. Now, before I dive in, for those of you who do have questions, are not getting answers, find us on Facebook. We're at facebook.com/Endurance Nation, or visit us on at endurancenation.us. You can use the chat bot on that page. Reach out to me, talk to me. I'm there. I answer almost every message that I get online. I'm happy to be a sounding board for you and make better and wiser decisions moving forward. Okay? So here we go. And you have to forgive me, but I'm gonna use a couple race analogies here as well, just to kind of liven things up for you. Okay, so first and foremost, the number one thing that really gets into people's heads right now is making decisions. Athletes struggle with making decisions, and when we get to talking about serious decisions like the ones you're facing right now about do I or do I not travel to this town, do I not defer this race or walk away from the money, your inability to make rapid decisions and early decisions will hurt you down the road. So a great example from race day is talking about pace decisions, right? So let's go to Ironman Coeur d'Alene 2009. I had been in a car crash not a few weeks earlier. Basically, a gentleman coming at me around a bend of a road fell asleep at the wheel and hit the front quarter panel of my car, totaled my car. Airbag went off of me. My kids in the car. Dear God, my wife was terrified. Everybody was fine, but I definitely, with the airbag, had some neck issues as well. So I couldn't train for the 3 weeks leading into Coeur d'Alene. I had been training up until then. I had plenty of goals. Those of you who attended the Ironman Lake Placid camp we held that year know that I was sleeping on the floor because I was trying to protect my neck. At least that's what they told me to do. And so I was really struggling to figure out what I was going to do on the day. And I hadn't really tried to do anything. I got out there, got on my stuff. I paid for the trip. I swam my bike. Things seemed to work. So I was like, let's see what happens. So I go out there and I race. And I had goals, but I'd set all those goals aside because of this car crash. But I just wanted to have a good race and be strong. Represent, right? I get out there and I'm on the run. I'm doing well enough on the bike, etc. I feel good. I get on the run, and early in the run, I'm running way too fast. Way too fast. I'm looking at my watch. It says that I'm running 6:30s. There's no way I should be running 6:30s in an Ironman. So I look at the guy next to me. I say, hey, man, my watch seems to be broken. It says we're running 6:30s. He goes, oh, yeah, no, totally, 6:30s. This is awesome. We're both going to PR. Mind you, this is like the half-mile mark, mile one, right? Hot Coeur d'Alene, just running on the lakeside. So I knew I was in trouble, and that trouble manifested itself later where I couldn't get my heart rate down on the second lap about mile 16. And I've had that experience before where I was not able to make decisions relative to pacing, and I was not able to keep the broader perspective in mind. And I had not made decisions up until that point reflecting the challenges that I was facing or the speed I was racing at or my overall goals. I was ignoring the need to make these small, short-term, very quick, rapid decisions to set myself up. I deferred them. Hey, next aid station, didn't go down. I said, next aid station, it'll drop, didn't go down. And I kept pushing and pushing and pushing, chasing and chasing until the wheels fell off at mile 16. At mile 16, the wheels fell off so badly heading out alongside the lake where it gets desolate out there in Coeur d'Alene that I knew I had to get my heart rate down. I couldn't eat. I couldn't drink. My heart felt like it was racing inside my chest. I was so hot, so incredibly hot. And so I had to stop myself. So the only recourse I had, I went to the bathroom. I went into a porta-john and I closed the door, which was also, believe it or not, insanely hot, right? But I couldn't run. Can't run in a porta-john. So I had to stop. And I stood there for about 2 minutes, tried to pee, which was not so successful because I was pretty dehydrated at that point in time. But it was 2 minutes stuck, right? And of course, I'm kind of looking out the little vents like people going by, but I'm just going to stay in here. I'm going to try and pee, take care of myself. Fortunately, I was able to come out of there, hit that next aid station in a better place, get the food I needed, and go on to get a roll down spot to Kona, back in the day when roll down spots were a thing. But my point being, I had deferred those choices earlier, and as a result, I paid a really heavy price, and I almost drove my own car off the rails. Similarly speaking, many of you, like our members, are struggling with making decisions now, interim decisions now, and instead you're deferring. My race got pushed. I'll push back 2 months. My race got moved again. I'll push back 2 months. And you're continuing your season. You're continuing to train in this holding pattern. You're continuing to manage reservation changes. All this stuff is inside your head, occupying really critical headspace. Right now, things are tough. You need to be game on at work. You need to be game on at home with your family. They need to know that things are going well, that you're paying attention, that all things are normal. And if you're filling your headspace with items like this that you just don't want to make decisions on, you're putting yourself at risk. And if you're not doing the right thing with your decisions, you're ultimately using that headspace. It's just soaking up all that extra energy you have for the other things in life that actually matter. Because after all, this is a game, right? So when we think about making decisions, you need to make them early and make them often. If you make quick, short-term decisions, for the most part, many of them don't have great consequences for you. Let's use an example. Ironman Hawaii was postponed this year. Several months ago, they decided they weren't going to be able to have the race in October. They offered people the opportunity to race in February and October of 2021. I looked at that and said, there's no way I want to go to Kona early in the year, but also I'm not sure we're going to be over this pandemic. I didn't know, but I knew pretty soon. I was like, you know what? I don't think that's really going to work or work for my schedule or everything. So I said, you know what? I'm going to just punt it a whole year. I'm going to make that decision now. That allowed me to move my flight. It allowed me to not have to book lodging or unbook lodging or move lodging. None of those logistics happened. I made the decision. I moved it to October. And lo and behold, just yesterday, they announced that the February 2021 Ironman Hawaii event is not happening, and they're going to let people do either October or the next one. Well, as a result, the people who went to February or didn't do anything are now being offered the opportunity to choose next October, but they may also have to choose October 2022. That's right, you could have qualified in 2019, but you may not race for 3 years in the World Championships. That's almost as bad as having a legacy spot because of your inability to make a decision early on that works best for you. And we make mistakes. I'm not saying all early decisions are right, but frequent early decisions put you in a position, keep you in control, but put you in a position where you can stay your course and be the person behind the wheel that's driving your vehicle down the road and ultimately keeping you in a happy and safe place. I think a lot of athletes underestimate the value of being in control and making those decisions. And they're tough. Talk to your friends, talk to your coach, talk to me. Find me online. I'll be happy to talk to you. But making those quick, short-term decisions, that's a critical skill. And that only matters on race day. Do I hammer this hill? Do I not hammer this hill? Do I eat this? Do I drink this? Do I not drink this? But it also matters at this macro level. We're talking about our season, making decisions about how we handle things, right? Super, super important. Okay, lesson number 2. We need to have a long-term focus, but we need to take short-term action. So building off of these frequent early decisions, we have to retain that long-term focus. What is your ultimate goal for this year? What is your ultimate goal beyond this year, right? Because if you start saying, hey, this year, I really wanted to bike across the country, but it looks like there's a pandemic happening and I really don't feel safe going to all these hotels and riding across, and I don't think it's safe for anybody else for me to do this project, or I won't be safe when I get home, or I may be in the middle of nowhere and I might get sick. There's lots of variables out there, some of which you don't even know, you can't even control for them. So we need to step away from that short-term goal that you had now and say, what is the long-term thing you were trying to do? Well, I believe you were trying to bike across the country not only to have fun and do something epic, but you're also trying to build a great deal of bike fitness. Is there a way that we can have you continue to build that bike fitness, meet that long-term goal, but do it slightly differently so we're not putting you or other people at risk? We're not creating a project that is really, on the face of it, a magnitude of difficulty harder than it would have been without this pandemic happening, okay? So what would an alternative be to doing this epic bike ride? You could plan some epic things from your house, right? You could plan to do an out and back. You could plan on cycling to a place to camp out and then ride back. You could have if your family's going to take a day trip somewhere, you can leave super duper early in the morning and ride your bike there. Ride a one-way trip or ride home. Come up with something super unique. Have a bike week. Since we don't have triathlons on the table right now, do a lot of cycling. Become a roadie. Go out, buy a couple pairs of socks. You can't buy a bike because everything's sold out. But buy a couple pairs of socks. Get a new pair of cool glasses from our friends at Roka and go out there and be a roadie for 6 weeks. Learn how to corner, learn how to climb, do all that fun stuff, right? Watch some YouTube videos, get really skilled at that stuff, become a stronger cyclist, embrace the opportunity that you have here, and push back that short-term epic thing you had to a time when it's more reasonable, but we still keep the long-term perspective in play. Our horizon, it's only shifted slightly because we're still on course. We're just taking a different short-term path. We're not completely jettisoning that. And I think a lot of people, because they can't do this next step that they planned, they're assuming that final destination down the road, that long-term goal that they had, they're assuming that's off the table. That couldn't be further from the truth. The decisions you make now will certainly alter that ultimate outcome, but you can, with some planning and thought, maybe strategizing with your teammates or friends, come up with a short-term action that still keeps you aligned with that macro goal. And that's really important because as endurance athletes, our top priority is to keep that long-term goal in mind. We are working to that piece of progress, whatever that may be, whether it's a certain level of strength, a certain level of speed, a certain number of miles or elevation, or whatever your goals are that you've crafted for yourself. We want to keep on track. Just how we're going to do it, the how has changed. So short-term focus is gone, short-term action is in, and we keep that long-term focus right there. Keep it in mind, have it laying out in front of you, and make the decisions that still keep us on target for that long-term goal. Great. Okay. So number 3, and this one is really hard. We all struggle with it because it's a contextual suggestion. But number 3 for me, I think is really important, and that is staying objective. Okay. So we are faced with unprecedented challenges, personal, health-wise, professional, athletic. There's tough challenges out there. Just going to the store is fraught with concern. For people that we thought were our friends, that we had lots in common with, they aren't participating in wearing a mask on their face, and maybe you think that's crazy, or your friends are wearing a mask and maybe you think that's crazy. For the side note, as coach, not a medical professional, I would strongly recommend that you do wear a mask anytime you're around anyone else or anytime you think you're exposing someone else. Super important, right? Let's stay in this together. But all that aside, staying objective is really important because emotional decision making is not going to set you up for success. So we need you to be successful, right? So let's go back to a race example, which is great, where you'll see athletes who crack on the race course and they are emotionally distraught by what's happened, right? So let's say you're riding your bike, you're climbing a hill, and your chain comes off and the person slips and falls. They're fine, like they're just a little banged up, they drop their chain, and the person gets up and they're just like, why? Like, why did this happen to me? Like, why now? Like, what, like I'm here to tell you, the race gods, they are not listening to you. They're not waiting to pick up the phone and be like, well, I'll tell you why, John. I'll tell you why we just dropped your chain on you, right? You're paying a terrible price for that, cutting off that old lady at the supermarket. No, we don't know why that happened, and getting upset about what happened doesn't help you solve the problem. There's certainly a time and a place to have your pity party or to deal with a problem. But when we're talking about racing or we're talking about big time decisions, it's really important that you separate the decision point from the emotional side of things, right? These are the decisions I have to make. Emotions will follow. I will deal with those emotions when I get there, right? So you'll have gut feelings. People will sometimes translate those emotional aspects of decision making into gut feelings. You do you, right? If you decide objectively with bullet points, you decide with your gut feeling, you decide the way you want to decide. I'm not telling you one way is right or wrong, but I am saying don't let emotions drive that decision-making process. Instead, be objective as possible to make sure that you're getting decisions in place that keep you oriented not only in those long-term goals, but keep you oriented in an action-focused way so you can continue to make moves, right? Because when we start making emotionally based decisions or we start having emotional conversations about decisions before we've made those decisions, then we're not making decisions, right? We're punting, we're wallowing, we're thrashing about, we're not acting. And these times, they call for action. And whether or not you end up on the right side of things, making a decision and moving forward is really, really important because delaying is only more costly in terms of time and energy. Okay? So in this case, being objective about what you can and cannot do relative to the season is really important. Yes, you can get upset that your races have been canceled and that you were going to see your friends and family there, for example. Yes, you can get upset about not being able to work on your swim this year. Yes, you can get upset about how your friends are, they've shut down all group activities and you don't think they should have shut them down and you're really upset about it. You could probably get angry at them and type up some mean Facebook messages, or you could jump on social media and just blah, blah, blah about everything that's happening. None of that is improving your current state. None of that is moving you forward. And as an endurance athlete, you are not only accustomed to moving forward, but you like to do so consistently, regular basis, with progress on the line, right? That I'm making steps, I'm adding up miles, I'm continuing to train, I'm getting fitter, I'm working towards this long-term goal. So objective decision-making is your friend. Again, have your time. If you've got if it was a work scenario, I'd say 9 to 5 or whenever you work, zoom on, zoom off, make those objective decisions. After 5 o'clock, sit down, Get yourself a cold beverage or a cold glass of ice cream. I eat my ice cream out of a glass, I should say, because bowls are too big for me. I get a little carried away with my ice cream, not going to lie. Then you can reflect on things. Then you can journal about what you want to do. But make those decisions, and then we move on. Got to stay objective about it. Cannot get into the weeds. Yelling at the race director who canceled your race because you don't agree with their policy is not going to bring back the race. They will not bring back the race for you. You may want to pull someone aside at some point and say, hey, I thought that was kind of crazy, or what? Yeah, fine. That's for another time, for another place. That's not the place where we are in right now. Okay? All right. The fourth and final thing I want to talk to you about making good decisions is finding opportunities. And this has been a classic theme for me as going across my years of training and racing. I mentioned earlier I've had some bike crashes because, hey, triathletes can't ride bikes, and I'm one of them. But finding opportunities is really important because you can always get carried away. You can always get into a situation where you say, I can't do this thing. I've lost this opportunity. I was going to cycle. I can't cycle. I've broken my hip. I was going to do this race. I can't race. I broke my collarbone, right? So when you are faced with these challenges, it's really important that you get into the mindset of saying, how do I flip this into an opportunity? What can I do now that I would not have done before because I was healthy, right? How is healthy an obstacle for achieving some broader goal? If you can identify that space, then you can turn that into an opportunity for you. So, for example, when I broke my hip and I couldn't train for 6 months and I was learning how to walk again, doing this stuff, I started a new business. I started Marathon Nation and started coaching runners because I had more time, right? When I broke my collarbone and I was out, I wrote a book, self-published, but I wrote a book. I said, I'm going to do something with my time. For you, it may be something, if you're entrepreneurial like that, you may want to do something on those lines. In other cases, you maybe want to finally pick up that hobby. Some of you have great hobbies that you like to do. Go back to that hobby, dive in with the music, dive in with the reading, dive in with the artwork, whatever that is. But now's the time. You've got that space. Let's explore that now. So give your body time to heal. Give the challenge a chance to pass, support people as they deal with this pandemic or structurally, whether through your actions or financially, or whether it is something that you do for work as a frontline responder, which we are so grateful for. But if you're at home, find those opportunities. What are things you can do now that you couldn't do before? So finding the silver lining, we are fortunate enough in my family to be financially resourceful and have the means to eat and not worry about work. But at the same time, it's been challenging. And I've had a ton of time with my kids. And I could be grumpy about that. But for me, I look at it and say, this is an opportunity. I'm cramming like 3 years of time with my kids into 6 months, maybe 12 months, right? Maybe 6 years. At the end of 12 months, that's phenomenal, right? They say that by the time your kids leave home at age 18, you have spent 80% of the time you will ever spend with them in your life. So they're 18. They're going to live, hopefully, a very long life. In that period of time, there's only 20% of time with them. 1 in 5. If you used to see them 5 days a week, you're going to see the equivalent of just 1 day a week. If they called you 5 times a week, they might call you one, or as my mom will tell you, they may never call you until you chase them down with law enforcement. This is precious time. So I'm turning this into a positive and say, what are the things that we can do now, right? And so really finding that opportunity is important. And that's also a mindset shift. It's easy to look at the challenges, but find that opportunity out there. I think athletes who are able to mentally and strategically adapt to the challenges that are beyond their control are the ones who are the most successful overall. You can spend 6 months moping about how you can't swim, or you can do something else with your time and continue to move the needle, right? You can be concerned about your job and maybe being furloughed or not being able to retain the job, or perhaps you're going to be put on part-time, or you can take actions related to that. Maybe you want to work on your resume, maybe fire up that LinkedIn account you've been putting off, maybe reach out to your supervisor, maybe find other ways to add value. There's spaces in our lives where there's agency to be had, where you can be proactive and remain in control. So seeking those opportunities is super important. Suffering and having that pity party, totally important, totally human, and I get it. But at the same time, let's stay focused. You, as an endurance athlete, are awesome. You have a superpower. You know what it means to set goals and to work towards them incrementally. That means you can do almost anything you set your mind to. But you have to get into a place when you're willing to do that. So I hope today's talk, little conversation here, perhaps a little over the top, maybe extra caffeine kind of hurt Coach Patrick's presentation skills. I'd love to hear some feedback from you. talking about weathering the storm and using race analogies and understanding from our past experience how we can do a better job contextually of responding to and adapting to the current conditions of 2020 and potentially into the early 2021, and make decisions that set us up for success, whether it's deciding quickly so we can iterate and stay focused on what we want to do, whether it's remaining on that long-term focus, right? Not wavering, not letting that get away from us, but making short-term decisions that perhaps are different, but keep us on that long-term path. Staying as objective as possible, keeping time for the emotional side of things, but using a rational mind to make decisions that are going to continue to keep us successful and on the path that we've chosen or a new path, should that be the way. But leaving emotion out of that decision-making process and using it instead as a tool to reflect or to cope in other areas. And then finally, finding opportunities in all of these challenges. And don't get me wrong, there's a million challenges out there. We've got challenges not only with this pandemic, but race has become a real issue here. Not a real issue, it's been a real issue, but it's become a real issue in terms of conversation that's been challenging for everyone, even people who crave the change, to people who are afraid of the change, to people who don't want the change, to people who desperately need the change. These are tough times, and again, nothing that we do anymore is easy, but that's all the more reason to show up. It's all the more reason to be ready to have these conversations, to understand critically where you're at, and to make decisions that are not only for your personal good, but also for the broader good as well. If you've got questions, comments, feedback about this podcast, let me know over at endurancenation.us. You can go there and use the chat bot, or find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Endurance Nation. I'll be happy to answer you there. Don't forget, if you look at the show notes here for the link, you can send me your questions. I'll be happy to answer them in my coffee talks, which are interim podcasts where I address smaller pieces of strategy, information, training, nutrition, etc. And finally, I want to thank you. For listening. And if you like the podcast, you think it was worthwhile, please, if you think of somebody, please share it with them. Just one person, share it out. I'd really appreciate it. Have a fantastic day, folks. I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.
For more information about Endurance Nation, visit us online at endurancenation.us. The provided music is from the Podshow Podsafe Music Network. Check it out at music.podshow.com.